The scale and speed with which COVID-19 spread leads to the inevitable implementation of a total lockdown from next Tuesday. The situation challenges the models of brands, retailers and manufacturers. This heightened sense of concern about future clusters, outbreaks and waves is a tangible outcome of COVID-19 that businesses operating across the nation must consider. How companies can identify, overcome and adapt to these challenges during the COVID crisis. These and more in just a moment. Hello there and thank you for joining me, Zahir Kelvinong Abdullah. This episode, Dato' Abdul Malik Abdullah, the Pro Tem Chairman of the Federation of Malaysian Business Association, is with me virtually. Dato', welcome to Money Matters.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, it's a pleasure. Now, just 2 days ago, FMBA actually said that they were not in support of a total lockdown. And yesterday, the decision was made by the government to have this total lockdown, which everyone says is inevitable. So how do you view this?
Well, to be honest, Kevin, looking at our members, we have actually 262 associations under our Federation of Malaysian Business Associations. And of course, not everyone agrees with us across the board. Different businesses have different take, depending, some of them are manufacturers, and some of them are actually very dependent, and they actually make more money if there is no lockdown. But as far as FMBA is concerned, my personal view, and we have about 50 associations with us, when there was a meeting with the Prime Minister on 21st of May last Friday, we did recommend for a total lockdown. As a businessman, we know we are going to lose money, but our caption was that we are ready to bite the bullet because lives cannot be replaced, but businesses can be replaced. That is our take. Thank you.
Right. Now, obviously since COVID-19 and the lockdown last year, have you been engaging, or basically has FMBA been engaging very much with the government in terms of your proposals?
Right. Well, to be honest, Kevin, in the beginning, it was a bit tough because when the MCO was introduced on 18 March 2020, we realized that many things were done, and we felt that industry captains were left out. And also, we were a bit concerned because many SOPs which was implemented by the government, by people who are actually handling the admin job, did not understand the nitty-gritty and the needs of the people on the ground. So we found a need that we should get together, and at that point of time, after 1 month, probably in April last year, we came up with this association and called ourselves the Business Survival Group. It was a one-stop center to gather all the associations who have a common interest and a common enemy to work with the government, and we felt that if we have a cluster or a group of associations working together, we will have a stronger voice to reach the government. And after that was done, I must applaud the government. They started engaging with us. Up to date, we have managed to meet 7 different ministries, and we even had a chance to have a dialogue session with the Prime Minister himself. And we had an opportunity to meet the Director General of the National Security Council, who also gave us his word that he will try to rope us in to sit together in the Security Council, that we could voice our opinions. So when SOPs are done, they are done for the convenience and the most practical way, that we don't have to change the SOPs and confuse the men on the street. And of course, the Director General was kind enough to say that there were already people sitting from the industry in the council to give their opinions. And then we told him that you need people on the ground. You know, you cannot only have the high flyers. people who are holding very top positions or people who are chairmen of company will not understand the need of makcik kia or the need of Atan or Rahman on the street.
Right.
You need somebody who can represent the people on the street. So that's how we voiced our opinion, and we met up with YB Zuraida. She was very attentive. She took our points. She got a secretary to note down whatever we want. And then we met up with the MEDEC minister, YB Dato Sri Junaidi, and he also was very helpful. We had the opportunity to also have a dialogue session with Topa, and we see that as we go along, the ministries and the government is now playing a more active role and allowing us to say our piece. And we feel that it's not their war or our war, it's a war of every single Malaysian.
Yes. Now, Dato, it's interesting that you said that because as of today, the Ministry of Finance basically has yet to make any announcement on financial assistance for this total lockdown. So since March last year, there's been a lot of financial assistance by the government. So with this upcoming total lockdown, what type of assistance do you think the government should consider, or what recommendations can you give?
Right. The FMBA has actually come up with a press statement yesterday, and we have circulated it with the press, with the media, and we also sent it directly to the ministers to assist. Because if you look at what the government is saying, that they have come up with a stimulus package up to date of RM 340 billion ringgit, which we are very thankful and appreciative. Without that, a lot of companies would have wind up by now. But one have to take into consideration that the physical injection was only RM 55 billion, which was actually injected into the economy. And one of the things which we really appreciate and we really feel very obligated with the government's UPA scheme. On the UPA scheme, which has been to date has got the amount of RM 14.4 billion allocated for the UPA scheme, that should definitely continue at least till 31st December 2021.
Right.
All of us know this virus is not going to go away today or tomorrow or next week or next month. The figures are getting more scary, right?
Yes.
And we feel that the UPA scheme, we have come up with actually about 6 points for the government to look into helping us on this new stimulus package. I would not say a stimulus package anymore. It's actually a rescue package. If you don't do the rescuing, a lot of people are going to drown, I believe.
Mm-hmm. So
People
have
been sustaining from March 2020. That's more than a year. And a lot of SMEs don't have the withholding power to hold until this day.
Yes.
The big boys will stay, but a lot of us are going to get swallowed into this dilemma.
Yes.
So the government has to help, and we hope the government will consult us, which is the best way to help, because one size doesn't fit all.
Of course. Dato, just hold that thought for a minute. We've just got to go for a very quick commercial break. We'll be right back after this breather. In the meantime, you can find us on Twitter to share your thoughts on addressing these new challenges in this just recently announced lockdown. You're still tuning in to Money Matters as we speak to the Pro Tem Chairman of the Federation of Malaysian Business Association. Now, Dato, continuing where we left off, obviously, like you mentioned, a lot of businesses will be facing a lot of losses during this lockdown. So how do you think the strategies can be formulated by these businesses to recoup their losses?
Right. This is a very subjective question, actually, Kevin, but in my view, that I think it's survival of the fittest. It's very important that we tweak our business in this era, digital economy, and in this era where you know that the only alternative we have is now, if you're talking about restaurateurs, because I hail from the Tando, from the restaurant background, we have to adapt to the surroundings. We have to see what is practical for our business. So there is no one general rule for everybody, but I guess that if we don't change, we are going to get changed. So that's very important that each particular business try to adapt to the environment, and what we can do now to bring in revenue is no more about saying that, example, my business is a franchise, I'm going to stick to my franchise. Like we have a training business. Training you can do online, so we're focusing on training. Everybody has to be versatile. You have to adapt to the situation around you. If you don't, then I think you cannot keep waiting for the government handouts, because the government's resources are limited. We are now looking at asking for the government for another rescue package, like what I said earlier. If you look at we still have a bit of space left in our debt situation. We are now at 58.5% of debt ceiling, and we have a planned deficit of 6%. Currently, it's at 5.4%. So I think hopefully the government still can help us, but we cannot be depending on that. If there's MCO4 happening in end of this year or in 2023,
yes,
or
agreeable.
2022,
yes.
What are we going to do? Are we going to wait for another package? So
yes.
I think we need to start aligning our business to think down the lane for 6 months or 1 year down the lane. And I hope sincerely that the government will look into, especially on the moratorium part. That is one of the essential things. Two things which can kill the business. Two things is the moratorium and the wages, because wages form 30 to 40% of our overheads. These two are the most important. Of course, then comes in the rental.
Yes,
right?
because obviously we don't want to see people losing their jobs. The main thing is making sure people have their jobs. So looking at this, how can the government look at it again if it's not to give relief packages, especially for wages?
At the moment, I think we have made it, in fact, we have called it a mandatory package. We are not even saying that it's an option for the government. We are pleading to the government that it's a chain reaction. If the shops start closing, people are going to get unemployed. It's going to be a big, huge problem. No one's going to pay tax. Companies don't pay tax. The government has to ensure that the companies survive so they can continue to pay salaries and they can continue to pay taxes. That's revenue for the government. So one of the short-term thing which the government should help is to ensure that, as I said earlier, the wage subsidy has to go on till the 31st December, but then we have structured it in such a way that 70% support for all wages below 4,000 ringgit and 30% support for wages above 4,000 ringgit. And this should cover all industries except those in the essential category.
Right.
Because essential category is already making money. So that's one of the things what we are asking for. And we are asking for a zero interest moratorium. We look at the banks which are still making huge profits. If you take the profits of the bank in the year 2018, 2019, and 2020, if you take the top 8 banks, they have made 93 billion ringgit profits in the last 3 years. 93 billion. So if there is another stimulant, there is a moratorium by the bank interest-free, according to our calculations, it will cost them about 6.4 billion ringgit. That's all. That's 7% of what they made in the last 3 years.
Yes.
So there is a window of opportunity if the banks come out to help the entrepreneurs or the business people. So that's what we are trying to ask for, a moratorium this time, which is interest-free. The banks did report losses, saying that they lost money, but that was not actually money which is lost. Money which was not collected in the interim period because the cans were kicked further down the road. The problem is that most people who are business people, their loans were extended, but they kept paying interest. So we are going deeper into the grave. It's not helping us solving the problem.
Right.
We hope the government can speak to Bank Negara Malaysia to come up with a concept where the banks now gives us a helping hand. Zero moratorium is very, very essential for us to continue. And the other one is statutory exemptions. Of
Yes,
course, people
which you
like
have mentioned as well. Now, Dato, obviously intensifying efforts to combat the pandemic, okay? Now, FMBA has strongly, like you mentioned, called on the government to double efforts to act fast in combating the deadly virus. So besides the move to implement this current lockdown, what is your observation of the current steps being taken to manage the pandemic in Malaysia as in healthcare services?
Right. I think a lot of people have been stereotyped in trying to condemn the government and saying that the things are slow and people are not happy and pointing fingers. I think it's not the time for anyone, be it the politicians or the opposition, to talk about changing government and taking every opportunity to just looking at negative things every day. You read the WhatsApp, where are the vaccines, what is the price of the vaccines, why haven't the vaccines come, who had paid money. I mean, we are all facing a very big dilemma. It's a catastrophe. The healthcare is going to collapse. And here we're talking about politics. I think we should all work together, and every organization and association have to ensure their members, their family members are trying and following 100% SOP. Are we complying in the first place? The government needs the support of the rakyat to make this program a success. If you ask me personally, I took my mother-in-law for vaccination today in Sanui Pyramid, and she's 80 years old. And it was done so professionally, and it was done in such a short time, and we didn't have to go for the runaround. So I think it's time not to look fault in whose department, whether it's KKM or whether it's a government agency or whether it's individual. I think all of us have a role to play, which the rakyat is not complying. If you look at even restaurants, I'm a restaurant owner, but a lot of restaurants, when they were allowed to dine, people were not following SOPs. They were taking maximum customers. Then the social distancing wasn't there at all. So that's the sad part, that
Yes.
when we get an opportunity as Malaysians, we don't appreciate that the government is helping us. So we should ensure that we comply 100%.
Yes.
Rushing back to Balik Kampung, the highways are all flooded highways. So people are trying to go back to their country, to their hometown. It's for Hari Raya. These are things which shouldn't happen at all.
Yeah,
Because
Dato, I need your comment on something that has been proposed by some countries as well, and basically the thoughts of efforts to achieve herd immunity. Okay, now there are some proposals that businesses should support this vaccination process by giving incentives to their employees if they were to get vaccinated. Do you think this is a good idea for us?
Yeah, I mean, we all have to play a part now, because the vaccination numbers are extremely low. It's very worrying. We're only at 2.7 million at the moment. Only 2.7 million which have taken one jab, and out of this, about nearly 1 million have taken both doses. So I think it's obligation of the employer or the business owner to ensure, which we have suggested to the NKN, National Security Council, every shop which has taken their staff to take vaccination should be given a certificate, so customers coming there will feel more comfortable, and that will drive in business. There are many businesses in Malaysia who are willing to pay. The private sector is willing to pay, so the vaccination can be done faster, and we can all have a safer place to live in. So I agree in the sense that if opportunities are given as what we are pushing for, I think it's already in the pipeline where private hospitals and GPs are allowed to give vaccinations, and also if private institutions and businesses can pay for the vaccination. If we pay for the vaccination and we do it faster, then the people who are below the B40 or people who can afford, government can give them for free. So that's another suggestion we're going to tell to the government very soon.
Right. Dato' Malik, thank you. We've just got to go for a final commercial break. And when we return, I'm going to ask you about the need to double efforts to combat the pandemic for Malaysian businesses. So stay tuned. Thank you for keeping us company. We discuss further on the COVID-19 business impact with our guest, the Pro Tem Chairman of the Federation of Malaysian Business Association, Dato' Abdul Malik. Now, Dato', the numbers today are basically quite frightening, of 9,020 cases as of today. Now, do you think that there's a need to double efforts to combat the pandemic? Based on your observation, do you think there's more strategies that the government or even business associations can adapt or work together with the government?
Well, basically, I think the figures itself are very alarming, and the way they are growing up in such a short phase. A lot of businesses and a lot of people have already tightened. Like in our establishment in Ditado here, everyone is now wearing a mask and a face shield. So we wear double protection now, and now they've come up with the mask, which have the double layer mask where you have a inlay, and most of the people already started using that. And I must applaud the government today. By chance, police came to our central kitchen here in Taman Mayang to check on all the procedures are being followed or not. 5 of them came to our office today to check in the central kitchen. So I think it's important that we Malaysians play our role instead of keep blaming the other party. I think all of us have to play an important role. Like today, when we entered the lift, even the lady in the lift said maximum 5 people. So everyone followed. You don't go more than 5 people. So I think there are a few things we should try to emulate what the other countries are doing. Like people are a bit unhappy with the vaccination process, whereby in countries like UK and US, you can just walk in with your identity card and get vaccinated, and then you get a certificate for it, which is so much faster and easier. And there are also cases where the vaccination is done in open ground in a big stadium, example, and people just drive through and do vaccination. So which have very little interaction among people. That's one which we'd like to suggest. And the other one is that we feel that the private sector, the government should rope in the private sector. What do they expect from the private sector? Can you imagine, as I said, we have 262 associations and how many thousands of members we have. So if we tell it to the presidents and they bring it down and we can all work as a team to help the government, the responsibility of the SOP is not only the government's responsibility. That has been happening for the last 1 year. I think they should put some onus even on the business owners and association to play a role to support the government on implementing the SOPs. Mm-hmm. The other one is that the shorter operating hours is definitely going to help, but at the same time, we've got to be careful when you give people shorter operating hours with short notice about the MCO. People will go stock up goods, and people will all rush to the supermarket or hypermarkets, and you give them a shorter time. So there'll be more people interacting with one another. So that is going to cause us problems. So right. I think MITI saw that very fast, and I think MITI has allowed that 2 hours shopping cap period, minimum period, has been allowed until 1st of June, I believe.
Right. Now, Dato', just moving on from that, looking at the short term, if the MCO were to end, which hopefully is something that we all are got our fingers crossed, do you think consumer demand would return in the short term, or are there more efforts needed for us to get back to the consumers demanding better incentives for themselves?
First of all, I'll be very honest. I mean, it's very nice to be pessimistic, but the truth of the matter is that if you can read between the lines, the MCO says this is phase 1. So we don't expect the MCO to end on 14 June. Expectation is the MCO will continue for a longer period, which is, of course, we don't want, nobody wants that, but we have to be practical and be prepared for a longer lockdown period. But having said that, I think the domestic demand, the GDP is driven by 70% domestic demand. So I think we are versatile, and in a matter of time, we will be on our feet again. And as you can see that a lot of businesses are still thriving and still are sustaining despite the pandemic issue has gone on more than a year. So I think it would take any time within 3 to 6 months for us to come back to maybe not where we were,
but some sort of normalcy, right? Dato',
yes,
unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Thank you very much for being on Money Matters. It's been a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Pleasure.
And for our viewers, do join us again next week, same day and time, for another in-depth discussion with more money insights that matter. I'm Zahir Kelvinong Abdullah. Thank you for watching, and do follow the National Security Council's COVID-19 SOPs. And last but not least, do stay safe and remember to mask up.